6 people I trained sat around that conference table, all of them with new titles glowing on the slide behind Justin's shoulder. Their names were bolded. Mine wasn't anywhere. "Before we close out," Justin said, turning toward the board members with that practiced smile, "let me highlight some exciting promotions in our engineering organization. I'd helped justify 3 of those cases myself. First, Sarah Coleman, now Senior Engineering Manager for Strategic Accounts." Polite claps. Sarah avoided my eyes. Then Oliver Martinez to Senior Architect. More applause. My pulse hammered. Anthony Davis to Principal Engineer. I gripped the table edge. And Brandon Foster stepping up as Director of Cloud Infrastructure. Brandon stood, smoothed his jacket, shook Justin's hand with that fake, humble nod. 18 months at the company. I'd walked him through our entire production environment personally because he picks things up faster from Ryan. They clapped for him. Board members nodded like this was normal, and my name sat there invisible, like equipment they assumed would always work. The 6th one. Not 2nd, not 4th. 6th. 17 years of firefighting their disasters. 17 years training almost every senior engineer in that room. 17 years hearing your time is coming every single time someone I'd mentored got the role I'd been chasing. I'm Ryan Brooks, 49 years old. Until recently, I was Senior Engineering Manager at TechBridge Solutions, a mid-sized cloud infrastructure consultancy based in Seattle. About 900 employees, roughly $130 million a year in revenue. Before this, I spent 8 years in the Navy working on ship communications systems. In the Navy, you learn 2 things fast. Discipline gets results, and when someone gives you their word, it means something. Both lessons would prove useful later. Our job at TechBridge was moving companies off their creaking on-premise systems into the cloud without burning their business to the ground in the process. My job was making sure the impossible migrations went right when we were already 3 weeks behind, and the client's CIO was breathing fire. If a project had red status on the dashboard, odds were my name was on the war room calendar. Summit Manufacturing's warehouse systems that kept crashing every quarter end. I rewrote their entire failover model in a weekend. DataCore's security audit that found 52 critical vulnerabilities. I redesigned their network topology in 2 weeks and walked their auditors through every change. Skyline Aerospace's Black Friday outages for 3 years in a row. The load balancing architecture I built is still what their engineering team calls the Brooks pattern. I managed 12 senior engineers across 3 time zones, owned a project portfolio worth around $28 million in active contracts, personally built or stabilized most of the flagship case studies on our website. And I trained 15 engineers who over the years moved into senior roles. 8 of them were promoted into positions I'd applied for. Promotions I'd been told I was perfect for, just not this cycle. Justin Walsh, our VP of Engineering, was my direct manager for 6 of those years. He wasn't evil, but he was exactly the kind of leader who keeps you hooked with vague promises and just enough praise. Your time is coming, Ryan. We just need a few more wins on the board. The directors really appreciate your reliability. Every time I heard it, it sounded reasonable. The first couple years, I believed it. Year 4, the math started bothering me. Year 10, I knew it was a pattern. Year 15, in that boardroom, when Brandon got the Director of Cloud Infrastructure role, the same scope Justin had been dangling in front of me for 6 years, I knew it wasn't an oversight. It was a decision. See, at 49, with my daughter Jennifer starting her sophomore year at University of Washington, and my wife Lisa dealing with some health issues that insurance only covers part of, I needed that promotion. Not just wanted it, needed it. The director salary would have made the difference between stress and security. between hoping the medical bills don't pile up and knowing we could handle whatever came. Lisa never complained, but I'd catch her looking at the insurance statements, doing that thing where she'd calculate which specialist visits we could afford this month. Jennifer was working 2 part-time jobs to help with tuition, which killed me. Here I was, supposedly this valuable senior engineer, and my kid was serving coffee at 6 a.m. before her 8 a.m. physics class. The meeting ended with the usual scraping chairs and half-hearted congratulations. A couple people squeezed my shoulder on the way out. "I'm sorry, man. You should have gotten it." I said it's fine, because that's what you say when something irreversible just happened, and you're not ready to show how much it landed. By the time I got back to my desk, there was already an email from Justin. Subject line, "Quick chat. Your growth path." I didn't open it. Another email came in from a key client asking if I could jump on an emergency call. Their new deployment was acting up. I answered like I always did. "Send me the logs. I'll join in 15. On the surface, nothing changed that day. I solved tickets, I joined calls, I calmed down a nervous client. My calendar still looked like a game of Tetris, but internally, something shifted that nobody else could see. For 17 years, I'd been giving TechBridge one thing for free: the compounding value of my experience packaged in training, explanations, and hand-holding. Every time someone got promoted over me, I told myself it was timing. That morning made it clear it was strategy. They didn't want to move me. They wanted to keep me exactly where I was most useful for them. In the Navy, we had a saying, "Don't volunteer for permanent duty." I'd been volunteering for 17 years, so I decided to stop being useful in the way they'd been exploiting. The first change was invisible to everyone but me. I stopped treating my knowledge like company property and started treating it like a professional asset. Up to that point, if someone asked me how I fixed something, I'd explain it in detail. Whiteboard diagrams, step-by-step logic, pattern failure modes, how to avoid them in future designs. Not because I craved credit, but because I didn't like watching people struggle with problems I'd already solved. That day, I drew a line. From then on, when someone asked, "How did you fix it?" I answered the immediate question, and nothing more. Apply this patch to this node. Change that setting and restart the service. Roll back that deployment. It's not compatible with their OS layer yet. I stopped turning every answer into a training session. I still solved the problem. I just stopped giving them the wiring diagram. The second change was documentation. I'd always documented my work, but now I started documenting for me. I opened a private log offline, not on company systems. Every day I wrote down which client was at risk, what broke, who was assigned to fix it, how long it bounced around before someone called me, how long it took me to actually solve it. I added who got copied on the thank you email, who was in the meeting when the win was presented, who said we when they meant Ryan. Patterns emerged fast. Level 3 issues were supposed to go to Brandon's new organization. In reality, his engineers poked at things for a few hours, escalated in Slack with "Hey Ryan, quick question," and then forwarded my fix to the client from their email addresses. I didn't correct them, I just logged it. The documentation revealed something I'd been too close to see. Over the past 2 years alone, I'd personally resolved 127 critical issues that were officially assigned to other teams. Not collaborated on, resolved. The average escalation time before it landed on my desk was 18 hours. The average resolution time once I took it over was 2.3 hours. I was a human SLA buffer. When other teams failed, I absorbed the impact before it hit client relationships or board metrics. No wonder my calendar looked like chaos. I wasn't managing projects. I was managing other people's failures. I also made one deliberate decision. I would train 3 more people fully, thoroughly, But they would not be inside TechBridge. They would be on my future payroll. The first was Maria Santos, a former colleague who'd left TechBridge 8 months earlier to freelance. Sharp engineer, frustrated by the same politics that were eating at me. Over coffee, I started feeding her insights about cloud architecture patterns, client relationship management, the kind of stuff you don't learn from tutorials. The second was James Park, recently laid off from a startup that burned through funding. Navy veteran like me understood how to operate under pressure. I helped him understand enterprise sales cycles, the difference between solving technical problems and solving business problems. The third was Ahmed Hassan, brilliant infrastructure engineer stuck in a junior role at a government contractor. He had the technical chops, but needed someone to show him how to translate that into client value. None of them knew about the others. I kept those relationships separate, professional, coffee meetings, technical discussions, shared articles. Nothing that would raise eyebrows internally. Outwardly, nothing anyone could point to shifted. I was still the first person in the office most mornings, still on the 7 a.m. calls with East Coast clients, still the calm voice in war rooms when systems were burning. But instead of smoothing everything over, I started letting friction sit where it belonged. The slip dependency wasn't mine. I flagged it once and let it move up the chain instead of quietly fixing it at midnight. If a project plan assumed I'd jump in if needed, I asked who owned that decision and what they were prepared to do if I wasn't available. If someone presented my work as theirs in a meeting, I didn't correct them in front of everyone. I just stopped intercepting their next crisis. I watched alignment problems appear like cracks in a wall after a minor earthquake. Not because I was pulling bricks out, because I stopped filling the gaps with myself. The first real test came 3 weeks after the promotion meeting. Datacorp's production environment started showing weird latency spikes during their peak hours. Brandon's team spent 2 days poking around, running diagnostics, bouncing ideas off each other in Slack. Finally, Oliver escalated it to me with the usual, "Hey Ryan, can you take a quick look?" The fix was straightforward if you understood their architecture. They'd configured their load balancer to distribute traffic evenly across all servers, but one of their database replicas was running on slower hardware. During peak load, that slower replica became a bottleneck that cascaded through their entire system. Old Ryan would have explained the problem, walked through the solution, maybe even drawn diagrams showing how to prevent similar issues. New Ryan sent a 3-line response. Check your DB replica on server 7. Hardware mismatch is creating a bottleneck. Reroute traffic or upgrade the hardware. Problem solved in 15 minutes. No explanation of why, no teaching moment, no context for future prevention. They got their fix. I got credit for the save. And they learned exactly nothing about how to handle it next time. Brandon sent a thank you email to the whole leadership team. Want to give a shout out to Ryan for helping us resolve the Datacorp issue quickly. Great cross-team collaboration. Cross-team collaboration. That's what they called it when I did their job for them. I started tracking these incidents more carefully. Not just what broke and how I fixed it, but the business impact. Datacorp's issue cost them roughly $40,000 in lost productivity during the 2 days Brandon's team was fumbling around. My 15-minute fix saved probably another $60,000 in potential downtime. But in the corporate narrative, Brandon's team had handled a complex technical challenge with support from other groups. I was infrastructure, part of the overhead, expected to work. The pattern was everywhere once I started looking. Summit Manufacturing's quarterly system refresh that I redesigned from scratch became successful process optimization by the cloud infrastructure team. Skyline Aerospace's security audit response that I personally managed became excellent cross-functional coordination led by our senior architect team. I wasn't invisible because they didn't see my value. I was invisible because my visibility would expose how much of their success was just me cleaning up their mess. That realization changed everything. The real visibility test came during our quarterly client review. Justin was presenting to the board and a couple outside investors. Slide after slide of upward trending graphs, 94% client satisfaction, 34% reduction in critical incidents over the last 2 quarters, improved response times across top accounts. One board member leaned forward. "These metrics look great. What changed?" Justin smiled. "We optimized our processes, tightened collaboration between product and delivery, and empowered our new director structure." More buzzwords. The board member wasn't impressed. "Give me a concrete example." Justin clicked to a slide about one of our flagship accounts, Summit Manufacturing. Green status, happy client quotes, technical stability. "How did you turn that one around?" the board member asked. "Last year they were one bad incident away from leaving." Justin started talking about escalation models and cross-team coordination. The board member listened for about 30 seconds. Then he looked at me. I hadn't said a word the whole meeting. "Ryan," he said, "you've been quiet." From a technical standpoint, what changed for Summit? I could have played along. I could have talked in abstractions. Instead, I decided to answer the question he actually asked. "Explain," I said. And for the next 15 minutes, I walked them through exactly what had happened. Not theatrics, just facts. Where their architecture had been fragile, how their old deployment model made every release a gamble. What we changed in their pipeline, the patterns we standardized across environments. I named my team members who'd implemented the fixes. I talked about the specific technologies we'd chosen and why. I explained the business impact, how we'd reduced their deployment time from 6 hours to 45 minutes, cut their rollback incidents by 78%, and built monitoring that caught problems before customers noticed. I didn't name Brandon once. When I finished, the board member nodded slowly. "Who designed that pattern?" "I did," I said. "My team implemented it." He turned back to Justin. "You should make sure this man doesn't leave." Justin laughed a little too loudly. "Oh, Ryan is core to our strategy." That was the moment I knew exactly how much leverage I had and how blind they'd been to it. Not because they didn't see it, because it was convenient not to acknowledge it. The breaking point came 3 months later. Summit Manufacturing, a $4 million a year client, was halfway through a high-risk cloud migration. On paper, it was Brandon's signature project. In practice, my team had designed most of the architecture, while Brandon presented slides with my diagrams on them. I'd given exactly as much context as the work needed to succeed. No more. A week before cutover, I suggested we run one more full failover test. Brandon waved it off. "We've already done 2, he said. "The board wants to see this live next Friday. We stick to the plan." I made a note in my private log. Recommended additional failover testing. BF declined. Proceeding with known risk. Friday came. They cut over. At 9:42 a.m., Summit's entire customer-facing system went dark. Every one of their distributors lost access to ordering. Support queues flooded. Their CFO started calculating lost revenue in real time. $12,000 per hour. Escalating. Summit's CEO called our CTO directly. "If this isn't fixed in 6 hours," he said, "we're not just canceling the project, we're talking lawyers." I was in a client call with Skyline Aerospace when my phone started buzzing. Text from Justin. "Summit down. Need you ASAP." Another text. "Emergency. Drop everything. I finished my call professionally, then called Justin back. Ryan, I know this isn't your project, he said, voice tight, but we need you to take a look. They're escalating to our CEO. What authority do I have to change the architecture? I asked. It's Brandon's design. Whatever you need, Justin said. Just fix it. I could have said no. Should have, maybe. But Summit's people were good folks, and this wasn't their fault. So I did what I'd always done. Dialed into the war room, listened to an hour of circular status updates, then asked for direct access and 10 minutes without everyone talking over each other. The problem was basic. Replication misconfigured, failover paths incomplete, monitoring thresholds set wrong. Exactly the kind of issues that would have been caught in a proper failover test. Any senior engineer should have spotted it during the prep phase. I patched what needed patching, repointed services, reconfigured their failover protocols, built in redundancy that should have been there from day one. In just under 2 hours, Summit was back online. Total downtime, 4 hours, 18 minutes. Cost to Summit, roughly $50,000 in lost productivity and customer impact. I wrote a clear technical summary, sent it to Summit's CTO, copied Justin and Brandon, and went home. It was 7 p.m. on a Friday. Lisa was making dinner. Jennifer was home from classes. Normal family time. The next morning, Justin sent an all-hands email to leadership. Subject line, "Huge thanks to the Summit team." He talked about the resilience of our engineers, cross-functional collaboration, and our ability to respond quickly to client crises. He referenced Brandon's leadership by name. He did not mention me once. I read it while drinking coffee, sitting next to Lisa, who was checking our insurance portal to see if her new specialist was covered. The irony wasn't lost on me. I closed the email and added one more line to my private log. Then my desk phone rang. Summit CTO. "Ryan," he said, "I saw your write-up. Brandon's team seems capable, but there are gaps." He paused. "We want you personally leading the rest of this migration. Not just advising, leading." "You'd have to work that out with account management," I said. "We already did. They told us it's not how your organization is structured. So I'll be clear. Summit wants you. If you're not directly involved, we'll be exploring other vendors." The call ended. I stared at my phone for a minute. Then I forwarded his follow-up email to Justin. No commentary, just the client's words. Summit Manufacturing requires Ryan Brooks's direct involvement for continued engagement. 2 days later, my decision was made. Because of outrage. Because the numbers in my log, and now in Summit's own words, made the next move obvious. I didn't rage quit, no slammed doors, no angry speeches. I gave myself 6 weeks to plan it right. Opened a separate savings account, calculated how many months of expenses I wanted covered, quietly updated my portfolio, not with responsibilities, but with outcomes. I had coffee with Maria, James, and Ahmed separately. Didn't mention the others, just asked each of them about their availability for consulting projects. All 3 were hungry for the right opportunity. Back at the office, I kept doing what I'd always done. Kept solving the hard problems, kept showing up on time, kept my tone professional. I just stopped doing one thing. I stopped building new muscle for them. That energy went somewhere else. I began mapping my own client relationships, who called me directly, who asked for me by name, who said, "We feel better when you're on the call." That was my real org chart. TechBridge's official structure said I reported to Justin and supported Brandon. Reality said a chunk of our most profitable clients trusted me more than anyone else in the building. Once I saw that clearly, the next step was simple. Not easy, simple. I submitted my resignation 2 days before quarter close. walked into Justin's office without a calendar invite, placed a single-page letter on his desk. 3 weeks' notice, I said. He blinked. Is this because of the director role? No, I said. That ship sailed years ago. He launched into the standard script. The timing is really bad. The team depends on you. We're about to roll out new initiatives. You're critical. That's exactly why this is the right time for me, I said. I didn't elaborate. I left. Within an hour, my calendar filled with meetings. Quick chat, touch base, transition planning. By end of day, everyone who mattered knew. The first panic didn't come from Justin. It came from the clients. Summit wanted to confirm I'd be at their Q1 strategy session. Skyline Aerospace emailed asking which company I was going to. Datacorp asked whether their support model would change after I left. 3 other clients reached out directly, not through account management, directly to me. I answered all of them the same way. I'm transitioning out of TechBridge. You'll be assigned a new point of contact. I did not add reassurance I couldn't guarantee. I forwarded all of those emails to Justin. No commentary, just signal. The first retention offer came the next day. HR framed it as career development. Let's talk about what it would take to keep you. We're discussing a revised title. There's room to adjust compensation. I listened. I thanked them. I declined. 2 days later, the numbers got specific. 30% salary increase, director title, some stock options. Flattering, but late. I declined again, politely, without drama. That's when the tone changed. Instead of "we'd love to keep you," it became, "we need to understand the risk." Moment everything fully flipped was a phone call I didn't initiate. Summit CTO again. "Ryan," he said, "when you leave TechBridge, where are you going?" "Independent consulting," I said. "I'm forming my own firm." He didn't hesitate. "What would it take for Summit to be your first client?" We talked for 2 hours. Scope, boundaries, availability. I refused to drag anyone from TechBridge with me. I refused to poach staff. He respected that. We settled on a retainer that was more than my base salary and Brandon's combined. Annual renewable, risk shared. A week later, the contract was signed. 2 more calls came before my last day. Skyline Aerospace and Datacorp both wanted me independently. Not TechBridge, plus Ryan. Ryan, full stop. By the time I turned in my badge, I had $2.6 million in annual contracts signed or in final draft. No website, no marketing, no business plan, just 17 years of receipts finally cashed in under my own name. That night, I sat down with Lisa and Jennifer at dinner. Really, sat down, not checking my phone, not thinking about the next crisis. "So," Lisa said, "how does it feel?" I thought about it. Like I should have done this 5 years ago. Jennifer looked up from her pasta. "Does this mean I can quit the coffee shop job?" "It means you can focus on school," I said. "And Lisa, you can see whatever specialists you need. We're done rationing healthcare." Lisa reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you," she said. It took guts. The week after I left, the real panic started at TechBridge. Not with a single event, with a trickle, then a flood. Justin called almost every day. "Could you extend your notice? Can we bring you back as a consultant just for these top accounts? We can match whatever anyone else is offering." The CTO offered to double the retention package. The CEO emailed asking for one more conversation before I made a permanent decision. I took that call. He pitched a role with broad authority, a CTO track, equity. If he'd offered it 2 years earlier, I might have said yes. Now it came across exactly as it was, a reaction to the realization that my absence exposed how much they'd been leaning on me. "I appreciate it," I said, "but I've already made my decision." "Is there anything we could have done differently?" he asked. 2 years ago. I thought about that. "Yes," I said, "but not now." He nodded slowly through the video call. We ended on good terms. 6 months later, Brooks Technical Solutions had Maria, James, and Ahmed as full partners, plus 2 junior engineers we'd hired. 8 clients total. The smallest contract was larger than my last TechBridge salary. The largest, a full infrastructure management deal for Summit, was $1.3 million annually. I built the team carefully. No revenge hires, no one poached. Just people I'd met over the years who were better than their job descriptions and tired of being stuck under someone else's ceiling. We paid well. We picked our clients. We turned down deals that reeked of the same dynamics I'd left behind. TechBridge, meanwhile, reorganized twice in 6 months. They lost $15 million in contracts. Some clients left for us, others went to competitors. Brandon was shifted into a role without direct reports. Justin pursued other opportunities. One afternoon at a conference, I saw Justin across the room. We talked. No tension, no cheap shots. "We should have made different decisions," he said at one point, looking down at his coffee. "We both did," I replied, "and they took us to different places." There was nothing else to say. We shook hands, walked back into separate conversations, separate orbits. People like to imagine revenge as some big cinematic moment, a speech, a public apology, someone admitting they were wrong loud enough for the whole company to hear. That never happened. What actually happened was quieter. The people who told me your time will come ended up staring at dashboards that looked worse every quarter. They sat in rooms trying to explain why their best clients were taking calls with me instead of them. They learned the difference between someone who knows the system and someone who is the system holding everything together. And I learned something too. Those 6 promotions over me weren't rejections. They were answers. They told me exactly how far my loyalty extended in their eyes. The real victory wasn't the money or the client success. It was Jennifer calling me last month to say she'd made Dean's List, not because she had to split her focus between school and work, but because she could finally focus on what mattered. It was Lisa scheduling that specialist appointment she'd been putting off for 8 months. It was waking up and checking my calendar without that knot in my stomach, wondering whose crisis I'd be fixing today. At 49, I finally learned what the Navy had tried to teach me at 22. Your time has value, and other people will consume as much of it as you let them. If you're in that place right now, watching people you train get promoted over you, while you're told to be patient, hear this. You're not invisible. You're convenient. And convenience is the cheapest resource companies have. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't yelling, quitting on impulse, or burning everything down. It's stepping out of a game that was never designed for you to win. It's letting your absence say what your presence never could. 6. People I trained got promoted over me. Every time they said, "Your time will come." After the 6th one, I stopped handing them my playbook. 2 months later, when they realized how much of their stability had been quietly resting on what was in my head, they came back with bigger titles, bigger checks, bigger speeches. By then, I'd already moved on. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.